A switch is going to make its forwarding decision for a frame based on the destination MAC address. And the MAC address is a 48-bit address, and I've illustrated it for you here on screen. 48 bits, that's 6 bytes, isn't it? At 8 bits per byte, that's 6 bytes. And we've got groupings of 3 bytes at the beginning and 3 bytes at the end. The first 3 bytes are referred to as the organizationally unique identifier. This is also sometimes known as the vendor code. So if you were to begin a business that manufactured network interface cards, and you would want to put a MAC address embedded into each of those network interface cards, you would need a vendor code that was assigned just to your company. And then once you had that, you could start all of your MAC addresses with those 24 bits, those 3 bytes. The next 3 bytes, the next 24 bits, would be numbers or digits that you came up with. And grand total, we now have a 48-bit MAC address. Again, the first half of the MAC address, the first 24 bits, or the first 3 bytes, that is assigned to a vendor, and then that vendor, they begin their MAC addresses with that code, and then they make up the last 24 bits and make sure they're unique among all of the network interface cards that they create. And by the way, it's not uncommon for a vendor to have more than one vendor code, more than one organizationally unique identifier, because sometimes companies merge. Sometimes companies just are large and they might need more than one vendor code. That's not a problem at all. It's totally okay for a single company to have more than one vendor code. In fact, as a reference for you, you might want to go on the internet and do an internet search for MAC address vendor codes, and you can get a nice comprehensive listing of what MAC addresses correspond with which companies. And if you see a particular MAC address on your network, maybe you're using some sort of a network sniffer program, that program itself might tell you the vendor, maybe it knows the vendor code, but if it doesn't, you can just reference the vendor code found in that MAC address that you've captured with what you found on the internet. And the way we write out these 48 bits is using hexadecimal notation. It would be far too cumbersome to use ones and zeros to write out the 48 bits, so we do it hexadecimally. It might look like this. We might do something like 5, 8, and then we have a colon, and then we might do 5, 5, CA, just an example MAC address. But I'm showing you that we're using hexadecimal notation, and after every 2 hexadecimal digits, we have a delimiter of a colon. That's one way of doing it. Another way you might see this written is to use a dotted decimal separation. You might have 4 digits. You might see something like 5855 dot CAFA dot 1551. We've got 4 hexadecimal digits, a dot, another 4 hexadecimal digits, a dot, and another 4 hexadecimal digits. Another way you might see it written, instead of the colons as our delimiter after every 2 hexadecimal digits, you might see a delimiter of a hyphen. Different ways of representing this 48-bit MAC address.